Hey guys, it's the Pink King here. Jurassic Park needs no introduction here. You all know my thoughts on those movies. After all, I dedicated the entirety of last month talking about them. However, I've never talked about the games. Jurassic Park and video games are not new bedfellows. These two things have existed for a long time, with games from the NES to the Sega, GameCube, and even today with Xbox and PlayStation. But all of these games, good or bad, there's one game in particular that has always stood out to me. Not only for how different it was compared to the others, but for the fact that it was like a movie that you played. That's right. Today we're going to talk about Jurassic Park the game. Released in 2011 and created by Telltale Games, Jurassic Park the game was one of the most unnecessary yet fascinating releases I've ever seen. If you're a fan of Jurassic and have been on the internet for a while, you'd know that this game dominated YouTube Let's Plays for years, with so many playing this game but never really knowing quite what to think of it. It got a lot of mixed reviews, becoming a game you either loved or hate, with very little in between. Now, some of you might recognise the studio behind the game, that being Telltale Games. Famous for their Walking Dead games, Telltale was one of the most unique studios at the time, as unlike a lot of other games, their ones weren't really games. With their games being iconic for their point-and-click method, that although wouldn't win any awards or amaze anyone, it was interesting nonetheless, as this gameplay style allowed for much more gripping stories. Take the Walking Dead games as an example. They were iconic for their stories, with how they were able to immerse you into their world, adding a few features that made it feel like you were there in the world, like your decisions really mattered. So when it was announced they'd be making a Jurassic Park game, people didn't quite know what to think. As there was no movie coming out, so it wasn't going to tie into a new release. Also, it was set during the events of and after the first movie, with characters we've never seen before, so it started to sound more like a fan fiction rather than a real game. So what did I think of it? Let's start with what I do like about this game. This game is very interesting to watch. Something about seeing what happened to other people during the same events of the first movie is something strangely fascinating to me. Seeing new sides go to the park while having to deal with all the new and old threats, it's really enticing. Hell, I'd argue that out of all the Jurassic movies and sequels, it's this game that has come the closest to recapturing the tone and vibe of the original movie, with a lot of the music and designs reminiscent of it. I also really liked the variety in this game. Whereas the sequels often reuse the same jungle environments, here they're always changing and evolving, whether it be jungles, pens, roller coasters, bunkers, ocean facilities, or docks. They're always changing it up here, finding new ways to keep the tension fresh and exciting. And possibly my favourite part about this game is its multiple perspectives. It's always changing up who we're playing as and what their goals are, not only keeping things interesting, but it changes up how we experience this world. It's all great stuff, really. However, this game is not perfect. There are a lot of issues with this game. One of them, possibly the biggest of all, being its gameplay. This style of gameplay works on paper, but in practice, it's very all over the place. There are moments where it works really quite well, and then there are moments where I wish I could play differently to fully experience what's going on. Like the action scenes with the roller coaster fight, or the T-Rex vs Triceratops duel. For me, I played this game both on Xbox and mobile when it was available, and I found it much easier to control and play while on a phone rather than a controller. And for a AAA game, that's not the greatest thing in the world. I know this is Telltale's way of gameplay, but it's very odd, you could say. Then you have the characters. Now, they're not the worst, but they're nowhere near as engaging or charming as the movie's characters. And for a game that's supposed to make us immersed through the characters and not the gameplay, it really can be a letdown with you having to play as characters you just can't stand, really. And for me, they're either ranging from boring and annoying to good but not great. And speaking of boring, this game has a lot of dull character building moments, but these, a lot of the time, tend to slow things down to an unbearable degree that it just becomes boring rather than engaging. And the worst part about this is your choices don't really matter. Despite this game giving the illusion of choice, it ultimately has none of it. Sure, a couple of things may be different each time you play, but you'll ultimately have the same ending, and the game will even punish you sometimes when you try to make different decisions. If this gameplay style was going to work, it needed more options, like alternative endings and scenarios. Not only does it increase the replay value, but it makes the game much more engaging as your choices matter most. But instead, everything ultimately feels like a guess until you get it right sort of deal, and that's simply not a very interesting idea. So yeah, this game is a lot of style over substance. It's a good style, don't get me wrong, it's a great style, but it's lacking in so many areas to make that style worthwhile, that ultimately it's just not an experience worth revisiting. But despite all the shortcomings and plain lack of necessity, I can't say I hate this game. Yeah, despite all the issues, and yes, I do have nostalgia for it, it surprisingly is probably the best Jurassic game in concept in comparison to every other game. This has felt the closest to the movies, and it even had a lot of stuff I, as a Jurassic fan, have wanted to see, like the new terrifying dinosaurs or a T-Rex versus Triceratops fight, and the Tylosaurus scene. That was just a pure stroke of genius. So yeah, despite the issues I have, I'm never gonna hate this game, and in fact, I commend it for trying to do something different whilst trying to stay as true as possible to what Jurassic as a franchise was. But what do you guys think? Be honest, I really want to know what you all thought while playing this game, and what takeaways did you have while playing it? Leave them in the comments. Also, while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe right now. My goal is to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and with your help, we can definitely do that. So, go subscribe right now. And with that, I will see you all next time.